Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Directed IRA podcast, the only podcast that has two reasonably, face for radio guys. We're trying to, this is all we have to work with. I mean, we get regular facials. We really try to make sure we look good for you on YouTube and sound very presentable on a podcast where lawyers, Matt, I don't know. How can I make people realize how special this is?
Well, we self-direct our own IRAs too, so we eat the food we're serving out of the kitchen too. So I think it's kind of a big deal,
Yeah. You know what, Matt, on that note, it's kind of funny you say it, because where was I at? It was like 2 or 3 days ago. I was somewhere and they go, oh, I was doing a little thing on Monday night for a webinar for a real estate group. And they were saying, well, you can buy cows with your IRA or HSA, or we heard that you were doing that. You can do this. And I go, hey, before any client of ours was buying Bitcoin in their IRA, Matt Sorensen did it. Before any client of ours bought a rental property in an HSA, I did it. Before anybody bought, this, that, and no. Before any client of ours was mining in their Roth, I was doing it. And so I think that, we're going to go out there and take the shots. We're going to be the guinea pigs,
Yeah. And we learn, and that's why we come back and why we can be effective at advising. Not are we just like looking at the tax laws and giving you good tax and legal advice, but also the practical things you need to know to execute on some of this stuff. So we just love self-directing and being able to take control of your retirement, invest in the assets that you know and love. And that's what this show is dedicated to. And today we're talking about buying and selling raw land. Yeah. Of course, we've got stuff on real estate in general, or buying a rental property, or flipping a house with your IRA. But what about the good old raw land that you can buy, maybe do some stuff to it, maybe not, and then sell for a profit in your IRA or 401k?
Ooh, and I like how you just threw in that little red herring, the red dress in the Matrix. He's like, maybe do something to the land or not.
Yeah.
Jeez, what do you want to throw out? No white bread for you. No sugar for you.
Yeah. And no more dairy.
No more dairy. Go vegan,
Just exercise, try to eat less meat. And as you're walking out the door, and no more dairy. Oh, dang it. Come on. Can't you just give me a vitamin or something?
Giving kudos to Brian Regan. We should have him on the show. That's one of his routines. We love him. But here's the thing. When you're going to buy and sell raw land, we know the legal and the tax ramifications of that. But on the techniques of making the most profit on raw land, that's not us. I mean, we'll just tell you what we think you should do and what our other clients that are making millions are doing. But this show is not about how to buy and sell raw land. It's how to do it in your IRA. We had Land Geeks on our Main Street Business podcast, and that's all those guys teach over there. Great stuff. And so there's some great groups that are teaching raw land trading, and it's kind of funny. It's like this dark web of land buyers and sellers in the country. They just like to buy land. You can go to New Mexico and buy 10 acres for like $500, and I own a piece of land, but it's different. So,
land has been pretty valuable and appreciating, particularly here in Arizona where I'm at. There's home builders now, are going gangbusters, just building as many houses as they can. They can get materials and labor for. They're freaking building. But what do they need? Land. What's that?
I don't get it. I was in Phoenix over the weekend, and I'm like, this is so barren and dry and hot and ugly and ugh. I mean, not that a desert landscape isn't a little beautiful, but up here in Idaho, I've got the Grand Tetons, pine trees, lakes. It's just these nut jobs down in Phoenix go, but it comes with 20-degree weather. Get over it.
Well, land's been going up in Idaho too. It's been going up everywhere. We've got, that's one of the big stories is this, lack of new homes being built. That's why we've had so much appreciation. There's a lack of supply, and builders have been gun shy since the last real estate collapse in like 07, 08. And so everybody got a little gun shy and frankly didn't get ready to be building at the capacity of our population growth. So that's created an interesting investment opportunity for those who want to buy land, do it strategically, whether you're just buying sell the raw land, or you improve it. And so we want to talk about those. It's been popular. I've had lots of clients do it. I know Mark's worked with lots of clients. In fact, one of my very first clients I ever did an IRA deal with was a land deal. He actually did an option on it. He didn't even buy the land. He just did an option on the land and then sold the option a few years later for a huge profit. So, so there's different ways you could do the land, maybe optioning land, or just obviously buying it outright and owning the land for a period of time for hopefully some appreciation and improvement. So,
and for those that are watching on YouTube, let's do a little housekeeping. You can catch this show on YouTube as well as your favorite podcast channel. And sometimes we use a whiteboard. We'll always let you know if that's the case. Today, I don't expect a whiteboard involved, but sometimes it's fun watching on YouTube. It's a little easier to get the training, the expressions, the fun, watching our facial expressions as we jab each other. But if you are watching on YouTube or your podcast channel, please give us a 5-star, give us a little share, give us a little thumbs up, whatever. It really helps other people find this. If you're here, hopefully you found this as a little hidden gem in your wealth building strategy. Please share it. And if you're watching, you're like, well, hold up, Mark Kohler's texting. Well, I'm writing down a topic for next week's show. Because sometimes in our show, we get these ideas of we need to do a show on that. Should I reveal?
I mean, I hope it's good. If it sucks,
okay.
I'm just going to say it. So don't make sure you're confident. Are you confident?
I'm confident. Okay. Well, I'm confident this could be a good one, even if it's the answer is no. Even if the answer is no. Mm-hmm. Here's the show title.
Okay.
Can you buy and sell NFTs in your IRA? What do you think? There might be some options.
Yeah. We're going to talk about that. There's different types of NFTs and some rules for IRAs on what ones you could buy or not. So yeah, let's definitely hit that.
All right.
I like that.
Anyway,
so stay tuned if you're like into NFTs. Maybe you've been following that. You got up to speed on it. But let's kind of hit an overview if you don't mind. If I could just kind of do a little quick overview on buying land in your IRA. So let me talk about a couple of things. Okay. First, and if you're like catching this and you're like, my IRA's at Fidelity, Matt, they won't let me do this. Okay. All right. Start over. Okay.
Well, you wanted to go back to the beginning of time. All right.
Well, so I'm just saying, if you're just like, I just barely caught this. I mean, I'm just saying we have the whole like first 5 podcast episodes are on just the basics of getting to a self-directed IRA. Okay. In short, if your IRA's at like Fidelity or Merrill Lynch, they won't let you buy land with your IRA. That's not because your IRA can't own land. It's because your IRA at Fidelity or Merrill Lynch won't let you do it. That's their restriction. So you got to move your account or the piece of funds you want to do for this, move it to a self-directed IRA custodian, like our company, Directed IRA. Okay, now you got an IRA, Directed IRA account. It could be Roth, traditional, SEP. It could be a solo, whatever. You're like, all right, I got a piece of land I want to buy. First rule is the IRA needs to own it, or maybe use an IRA LLC.
Man, you're going really fast here. This is insane.
I'm just giving. That's why I say I'm giving the overview.
Okay, all right. I was like, man, laying out.
Okay,
geez.
Okay, IRA. Okay,
this is the trailer. I always hate trailers because it gives away the show. It's like always the best scenes. I'm like, why watch the show? I already know who killed him. Okay, go ahead and give him the trailer. All right.
I like to give him the roadmap of where we're going.
Right.
You know,
fair enough.
Okay, and then that's what we learned.
Then we'll unpack.
We were harmonized. She's like, tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them. Okay, I'm telling them what we're going to tell them first. Then
all right. So back to this. You now know you can do it.
IRA is going to own it.
Okay.
The IRA is going to put the money down for it. The IRA is going to get any rental income if you have it. But now this is the raw land. So you can't use it. You're holding it for investment. Maybe you improve it. We'll talk about that. But the goal here, of course, is for it to appreciate in value and you to sell it and get income back. Now, again, you could rent it. I've had some clients that have rented it for cattle or other people that have use of the property. We had one client.
Cell towers.
Cell towers. We had one client renting it to a hunting and fishing club or something like a hunting club.
Billboards.
They would put people on billboard. There you go.
Yeah.
So you can own the land and still have some rental income, or it could just be, just holding purely for hope to sell in the future. So that's the basics of it. The gain goes back to the retirement account, no tax. That's the awesome thing about using a retirement account to do this. All right.
Okay. Geez.
That was the big picture.
Man, tell them the spoiler alert.
It would have gone faster if I wasn't interrupted.
Yeah. Geez. Oh, by the way, at the end of the show, we got to do a Britney Spears update.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Now that's kind of a
Very
Main Street business podcast. For those that didn't know, we have our sister podcast that's more about business, tax saving, asset protection, and wealth building, where we've dedicated this podcast just to self-directing. But we got to cover the important issues. And it was in the news. Who cares about the Senate bill or the House bill? I mean, Britney Spears. I mean,
that's right.
Let's keep it straight.
Free Britney.
All right. So when you said you went back to the beginning, I thought you were going to say, now there was Adam and Eve, and Satan came along and said, Eve, you can self-direct. And she's like, really? And so she went for it, and now all hell broke loose. Now they know. So just those things happen back at the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, Mark is definitely color commentary today.
What?
So...
I'm going to throw down. Okay. All right. So step one. Okay. You bring it on, bud. Okay.
Let's say Britney Spears has an IRA. All right. And she wants to buy some land. Okay.
Poor Britney. She gets beat up so much. I can't use her as an example. I respect her too much, as an entertainer, right. as a fellow entertainer.
Britney wants to self-direct. Geez, free Britney and free Britney's IRA too. Let her
self-direct. Free Britney's IRA. Yeah, we got to get her on the show. Okay. All right. So here's the deal. You may have an IRA with, say, 50 grand. The nice thing about raw land trading or buying and selling, I will say this, the price point is a lot less in some instances. We've had clients start out with raw land that is completely undeveloped in some unique areas, and just a road being added 50 miles away can double the value of their raw land quite quickly. So that's what raw land trainer, programs will teach you, is that you're going to buy raw land in unique areas. You could buy raw land that's 5 grand, 500, or 50 grand, or 5 million. So you've got all these variables. Raw land can be pretty exciting at a lower price point. So let's say in step one, I'll do step one. Yeah. Is that all right, man? Okay. So step one, you're in this circumstance where you have some skills, you see some raw land opportunities, you're learning about it in your own trading. Maybe you're doing this personally and you're like, what the hell? I'm going to let my IRA do this. So you've got 50 grand, let's say, sitting over in an old 401k from a prior job, or an IRA, a Roth IRA, which we'd prefer, the gem of all. But let's say you got 15 grand sitting in an IRA at a broker dealer. They're not going to let you do this. So step one is open an IRA, preferably at directedira.com. We love them. We're affiliated with them, both officers in the company, love it. But check out directedira.com, open up the type of IRA you want. Maybe it's a Roth, maybe it's traditional or whatever. Open the IRA and transfer the money. It's tax-free. There's no penalty. You're just moving the money. I had the other day, someone said, I got to pull money out of my Fidelity to buy raw land. No. You're not pulling the money out of your Fidelity. Step one, let's get the money ready to go by transferring it to an IRA custodian trust company like ours that allows you to buy raw land. Step one. Fair enough?
Yep.
Okay. You do step two.
All right. Step two is the IRA is going to be the buyer. When you go to the contract on this thing, Mark Kohler's not buying this. Britney Spears is not the buyer on the contract. All right. It's Directed Trust Company, FBO, Britney Spears IRA. That's who's going to own the property. Now you could use an LLC. This is more common for flips and rentals, but raw land, there's not a lot going on with it. It's not like you got a lot of bills. You got a property tax bill once a year. You may not need an LLC for raw land, but you could, depending on other investments you're doing. So, but just the principle is IRA is going to buy. IRA is going to be on the contract. IRA is going to be on the deed. The money from the IRA is going to be on the down payment and earnest money. It's going to be the money going into close.
Okay. Now, as a good co-host will do, I'm going to tell my partner he blew it. That was not step two. All right. And I'm just going to say, step two.
That was my step two.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to tell you the real step two, damn it. Okay. Step two is you've got to decide how you want to buy this raw land, because you may do it, like Matt said, through your IRA directly. You may do it through an LLC. So I think step two is, let's sit back. This is where a consultation with one of our lawyers at the law firm can be very helpful. And maybe listening to, again, our first 5 to 10 podcasts in this session, in this series, because you got to realize you have options. And so, Matt, I respectfully say, I think step two is, you got to have a plan. If you just go out and buy this land in your IRA, you may have not realized there were some other options. if I may say.
Okay.
Now, so maybe
Yeah.
step 2 is, could we define the 2 paths, a fork in the road?
Okay. Yeah. We could define the 2 paths.
Okay.
Now, I kind of said that, but you could say it, Mark can say it in his way. Anybody new to the show, Mark's a little opinionated.
What? I would throw it back at you. All right. No, but I think, but I
true.
think
Fair point. Fair point.
Yeah.
And I say this with all due respect. With all due respect. No, just kidding, guys. But fair point. True. You may just buy it with the IRA directly, which you have a little bit of different path, or you may use the LLC. Let me just say this though, because I don't want to get too far into the LLC. We have a separate podcast episode on that. So if you're like,
yes,
ooh, I want to do the LLC, I want check writing. Do I need asset protection for the raw land? Probably not. I mean, it's not like a rental or a flip where there's some liability concerns as much. Just depends on the other stuff you're doing, on whether you're going to pick the LLC. The whole separate podcast episode directly dedicated to that'll outline how you do it.
Okay. Now, the reason why, and I agree, completely agree. Great comment. But I want to tell you why an LLC might be the right route when you're doing raw land, and why it may not be, and you just want the IRA directly to own it. For example, let me give 2 examples.
Yeah.
Example 1 is, you see a piece of raw land. Maybe it's in your town, in your neighborhood, near grandma, whatever. And you kind of see it as a strategic acquisition. You're like, I'm not in the business of flipping raw land. I'm not going to go out and do 10 more of these deals. I just want that raw land. And I think they're going to put in an overpass. I'm just going to sit on it for 3 to 5 years. And I just want, it's kind of you're not doing this actively. Matt, I would say that would probably be a good fit to just let your IRA buy it. Go on title. When you have to pay property tax every year, transfer money to the IRA or make an additional contribution so it can pay the property taxes if necessary. But it's just kind of a simple deal. Would you agree?
Yep.
Okay. Now, my daughter, Sydney, actually did some training at Land Geeks and bought some raw land. She still owns a few parcels. And if you go down the path of saying, I want to buy and sell more raw land, you see it as a strategic opportunity. Maybe you've got a little experience in that. And like Matt said, you might see an opportunity for renting it to a farmer, a cell tower, a billboard, who knows what. So if you're going to go down that path, what happens is you're going to see a lot of transactions become necessary. You might buy and sell quickly. You might need to pay for some property tax or a little improvement, or maybe some surveying. And all of a sudden, those transactions create a huge burden on having to call your custodian or trustee every freaking week. And you're like, you're going to get fed up real quick. So I think the LLC becomes a good fit for when you're going to be doing a lot of transactions in the land arena. What do you think?
Yep. I totally agree. Yep. Or maybe you're going to do some improvements. I think, that's one where I've had lots of clients like, let's definitely use an LLC. They're like, we're going to, get the zoning changed. We're going to, put in some curb and gutter or whatever in preparation for a builder to come in and just have it be turnkey for them to just start building. So even if it's just paper development stuff, the LLC could be helpful. So
yeah, I'm good with all that. Now that, to me, in retrospect, everybody, is step 2. You want to get your money over there. And then step 2, have a plan. Whenever you kind of get excited and you kind of move quickly into a transaction, you sometimes have buyer's remorse going, what the freak? I could have done it differently. So I'd say step 2, map out your plan for this land buying strategy. Is it a one-off deal? Is it going to be more frequent than that? And then you go to step 3 and start to consummate the transaction.
Okay. That's an interesting way of saying it. Consummate the transaction.
Wow. Was that a little too sex ed class?
I was like,
I
just consummated the transaction on this real estate deal, honey. You did what?
You consummated who?
I bought some land with my IRA. Mark Kohler calls it consummating the transaction. Oh, okay.
Complete the transaction. Okay, that's it. I'm going to look up consummating. Well, I better not. I better not.
Yeah. Careful what you type in there. Okay. Well, here's an important tip that's unique to land with an IRA.
Okay.
Let's say you're buying a rental with your IRA. One consideration is always going to be, should I get a loan? And it's like, well, if you get a loan, you have to get a non-recourse loan because you can't guarantee the debt. Same thing with land here. But one thing that's unique on the non-recourse loans is there's a lot of banks out there. We have a ton listed on our site that like to lend to IRAs, just buying single family rentals, or your IRA LLC buying a single family rental. One of their loan conditions, though, is the property must have income. It's got to have rental income. So getting a non-recourse loan to buy raw land is really difficult because there's no income. The lender's like, well, we need income on this to make sure that the IRA can pay the loan payments. So generally, you're not going to get a non-recourse loan or a loan to purchase raw land. A lot of clients are buying with cash. Now, you could negotiate terms with the seller, for example, to just have some seller carry that's non-recourse, where you pay some amount down now and the seller carries the balance. So just keep that in mind. A little unique thing on land as opposed to maybe a rental. The non-recourse loan is going to be a little trickier to pull off and probably impossible if you're trying to use a bank.
And I would say that too. I've got a lot of clients that do land trading or land investing, and rarely is there going to be lending involved. The lenders don't like to just sit on land because they're worried if there's not cash flow, who's going to pay the bill?
Yeah.
So I agree with that. And maybe this is a good point to say, are there any more steps? Maybe not, because I think when you're ready to when you're ready to complete the transaction, in step 3, it's really, you're either in the LLC world or you're in the direct hold world in the name of the IRA. And so let's just talk about issues to consider. So number 1, Matt just said, lending's probably not a good fit. Even though you can do it, it may not be a good fit. Number 2, I'm going to bring up a unique consideration, and that's privacy. I have a lot of clients that when they're buying and selling raw land, they want to, there's a lot of techniques that I learned through Land Geeks of keeping privacy, where the mailing address may be, is your personal name on this or not, because it could give you leverage in a other sale if they see you as a holder of other properties. And so if your IRA is going to go on title on this property, then your name's going to probably be out there, right? It's going to be IRA, XYZ. What would the title look like, Ben? Give them.
Yeah, it could be. So if you're buying with your IRA, it'd be Directed Trust Company, FBO, Britney Spears IRA. Now we do have the option. You have to special request this because it takes a little more work on our end, but where you could have your IRA identified just by the account number. So it could just be Directed Trust Company, FBO, account number 1233456. And so your name's not on it. We are going to identify it based on account number investing. And so maybe someone like Britney Spears, who may not want people to know that she owns land somewhere, or just, every ordinary American may like that. You could request that as a special request here. There's a couple other trust companies that do that. Most don't though, but we thought it's a nice little thing to add, even though it does take a little more work. It's a nice, get some privacy.
It's a nice feature.
Yeah, that's a real nice feature.
Yeah.
This one keeps your food cold.
I don't know. We're kind of on a Brian Regan kick. He has another.
I haven't listened to him forever, but his lines just seem to come up. They just pop up. And
if you want to have some fun, folks, when you're done with this podcast, and only after you're completed listening to this, after you've consummated this podcast, then you can go over to YouTube and type Brian Regan refrigerator, because he's got this little thing where he goes, I went to buy a refrigerator and they're like, this one makes ice. This one keeps it cold, which is a nice feature, It's like, what do you have, Anyway, so I think privacy is a consideration. And the nice thing about an LLC is you can name it whatever. You can have a mail forwarding address strategy. We've set up LLCs where our office is the address for your LLC. And you may even
extra fee for that, but in the law firm. But
there's a fee. Yeah, we just don't do it for free. I'll make Matt's home address the address for your LLC anytime you want.
Yeah.
Now, but But some people want the privacy of maybe another entity being the manager of the LLC. They want to bury this thing in privacy. So the LLC would allow you probably some more flexibility for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Third issue. I'm going to go down the issue of frequency. See, if you're doing more than 2 or 3, I'm going to say more than 3 or 4 land swaps. Let's call them land deals. You're selling a piece of land and reselling it before even 12 months is up, which if you do that in your personal name, if you did less than 3 or 4, you're going to have short-term capital gain. If you hold it 12 months or more, you have long-term capital gain. Well, you're going to say, well, Mark, if I'm doing these land deals in my IRA, I'm never going to pay tax because it's my IRA. Well, buckle up. You may want to read a chapter on this in Matt's book regarding UBIT. Do you want to explain that in English for people what that means? UBIT?
Yeah. Basically, it's unrelated business income tax. And so if you're flipping enough property in your IRA where you're, buying it and flip, like Mark said, less than 12 months, you're owning it for less than 12 months before you sell. If you're doing a lot of that, the IRS is going to look at your IRA like it's in the business of real estate. And if it's in the business of real estate, IRAs have to pay unrelated business income tax. If you're holding them for 12 months though, or you're only flipping 1 or 2 a year where you only own it less than 12 months, and it's only 1 or 2 deals a year, your IRA is just investing. And investing income is what IRAs are designed to receive and you don't pay tax on. So you just want to make sure that you're only doing a certain amount of transaction volume, 1 or 2 short-term deals a year in your IRA. Totally fine, holding less than 12 months, no UBIT. If you're like, man, I'm doing 1 a month where I buy it and I hold it for a few months and flip it, and I'm like, oh, that's enough. You're going to have this UBIT tax problem. We got a whole separate podcast getting into that, strategies to minimize it and avoid it. There are some strategies to minimize and avoid that. So check that out, but just flag that as an issue. If you're like, man, I was hoping to just flip a property every month or some land every month.
Yeah.
And careful.
And for those of you that are in the land flipping business, and you wanted to catch this podcast, I've got to exemplify or explain Matt's last point with a little story. This was probably, 15 years ago. I met with a client that was a ex-farmer / rancher. Okay. And he was down in southern Utah, and he had given up ranching and farming because, of course, there's no money in it. And he started, it's a lifestyle choice. He said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy and sell land in the farming areas where I live because I know land and I know farms. And he had sold his farm and split it up. And he'd kind of realized that buying and selling land was more profitable than buying and selling steers. So he said that was his deal. And he came to my office and brought his tax return and said, I need help trying to create privacy. And I want to talk about maybe some write-offs and things for this land business I have. Now, what was interesting was he brought his tax return and I pop it open. And what was I looking for? I was looking for a business. He didn't have an entity. So I thought, well, this will all be on a Schedule C as in Charlie. But no, he had a Schedule D as in David. And what his accountant had done is put 25 land deals that he did last year and called them all short-term capital gain and threw it on a Schedule D. And I was like, whoa. Now, this is where land geeks and I might debate this type of stuff a little bit. But most accountants, and I think, and what we feel strongly about, and as the letter of the law, is that I told him, you're not buying and selling investments. You're buying and selling inventory because you're in the business of this due to the fact you're doing 5, 10, 15, 20 in his situation deals. And he's like, this was terrible news for him. He was like, oh my gosh, I want short-term capital gain. I said, no, this should be on a Schedule C, which means he's subject to self-employment tax. Now, on the flip side, what did he come in to ask me? Mark, I want write-offs on my land business. Well, if it's buying and selling investments, there is no write-off unless it's directly associated with the improvement of the property or the basis for which you bought it. And he was like really wanting write-offs, which means he needed a business. but then he didn't want to pay self-employment tax. So he wanted to call it short-term capital gain. And so he wanted his cake and eat it too. He was stuck in the middle. And I said, bud, you don't have a choice. This is an operational business. Let's do an S corporation. You're going to pay a little bit of salary, which is cool. We can drop it in a 401k and get you the trading land in your 401k as well. And let's go treat this like a business. And so full circle here, when Matt talks about UBIT in an IRA, it's the same concept. If your IRA morphs into really the business of buying and selling raw land, then that's when this extra tax comes into play. And we got a strategy for it, folks. We've been thinking about this. We have a blocker corporation, and we got strategies that'll help you do exactly what you want to do and make a ton of money doing it. But you just don't hack it out at Home Depot in the DIY aisle. Give us a call. So
yeah. Okay.
Did you like that story?
Yeah, that's a good one. Great story. Taking it back 15 years. I mean, I like that. That was Mark's way of demonstrating his deep experience in the field. If you didn't catch on, that was a good little, I'm just teasing.
What other issues you would say?
Well, one other issue I do want to talk about is, let's say you want to kind of do some development on it. You're like, I don't want to just hold the land. Like, good Matt, call. I get these all the time. We had a lot of real estate developer clients over the years that are like, I can use my IRA to do this. Like, yeah, you can do it. Now we want to be careful. So for those of you who want to improve the property, whether it's a paper development or physical improvements, you need to know a couple things. Paper development's probably pretty easy to get away with as long as you hold the property for a few years. So let's say, and by paper development, I mean, let's say you buy some land that's like agricultural property, or it's zoned for residential and you want it to be commercial, or vice versa. You're going to make a zone or use change of it. And so you got to do some paperwork. You might have to have some engineering involved. You might have to go to a planning committee meeting or send a consultant or lawyer that you pay to go to that. So the paper development, you're going to be okay. Like, we're okay with your IRA doing that. You're not really physically improving it. So the IRA, again, we want to make sure your IRA is not in the business of developing real estate. It's simply investing in the land. So paper development, as long as you hold it for a few years, doing that paper development process, getting maybe a zone change or changing a density or whatever it is, cool. All right. I'm not so concerned about UBIT. What if you're like, Matt, I want to sell it to a national home builder. And I had a client just like this. They were a real estate developer. They buy land in their personal names all the time. And they're like, I want to do this with my IRA, this next deal. Okay. How much improvement can I do? Well, you're not building homes on it. That's for damn sure. Because if you build homes and sell homes, that you're in the business of real estate. That's development. You're going to have UBIT, which is this UBIT tax we've mentioned is 37%. So what can I do? Okay, here's a middle of the road approach I took with one client after analyzing it for quite a long time. They did some physical improvements, putting in curb and gutter, some utilities. They had to do some environmental cleanup on the property. They held it for about 4 to 5 years, and then they sold it to a national home builder. Now they put about $600,000 into the property to acquire it and put in these improvements. They sold it for over $5 million. This is two people's Roth IRAs that went in and did this together. They had about I think it's about a 4 or 5 year hold on it. And it's like, it's not UBIT because they had investment intent. They held it for a long time. They improved it a little bit, but they didn't build it out. They weren't in the business of it, but they knew if they had teed it up that way, that a national home builder was more likely to come in and scoop it up and pay a higher premium on it. So that's an example there. Just got to be careful if you want to do more development. Just know there's that UBIT issue, and there's a line you could cross where you could hit UBIT.
Yeah. And it was all in a Roth IRA, which was just freaking amazing.
It's awesome. Yeah.
I would, I don't know if I have any other issues or concerns that one would consider other than what we've already talked about. Oh, you have one other one?
Yeah. One other one. Sorry.
This is good. Yeah. Good.
One other one. I just say, just the maintenance on it, okay, you can't use it. You can't use it.
Can't park your RV on it.
Can't park your RV on it. Right. There's actually a case of a dentist, of course, who owned the land next to his dental practice, and he would let employees park on the land that his IRA owned. And that was a prohibited transaction. So you can't have use of it. Be careful on the adjacent lot. I get that one quite a bit, where it's like, well, I own this property, but I want to buy the lot adjacent to my property with my IRA. Be careful on your use of that.
When I say why.
That. Yeah,
And
right. Why?
Yeah.
Well, are you going to put stuff on it? Are you going to use it personally? Why does that have to be that one?
Yeah.
So,
but you may say, I just want to tie it up for view purposes, and I don't want someone next to me.
Yeah,
and I could sell
be
it.
A personal benefit. I'm a little concerned if you're like, I just want to tie it up for the view.
Yeah.
Your IRA really needs to be buying it just for your IRA's investment intent.
Yeah,
it can't be a benefit to you.
Good
last
point.
thing I was going to say was on just maintenance is you're going to have some expenses. You're going to at least have a property tax bill, and just know that you don't pay that. This is a common one. The property tax bill, the client pays personally. Don't do that.
Oh my gosh.
Have your IRA pay it, or if you're doing the IRA LLC, have the IRA LLC pay the property tax bill.
Yeah. And you may say, well, my IRA doesn't have enough money to do that. Well, then maybe you overbought.
Right. Buy get more money in it.
Yeah. Leave a little cushion in your, and see, that kind of goes back to step 2, have a plan. Because if you say, well, I'm going to buy this raw land for 10 grand and you only have 10 grand in your IRA.
Yeah.
You better know first, do I have the ability to make additional contributions next year to my IRA so it can pay the property tax? Yeah. What is the property tax generally going to be? Does my Roth IRA going to have enough money to do that? And so you want to think of and how long do I want to hold this? If it's a 5-year hold, holy crap, you're going to have 5 years of holding expenses, and your IRA better have the cash wherewithal to do that, whether additional contributions or transfers. And that's cool. Just have a plan. Just have a plan.
Like it.
Well, yeah, I love it. And I think so. And I just don't know if there's always some issue, you could think about, but I think it's a great strategy. We have a lot of clients doing it. A lot of clients buying land where they know, again, there could be some expansion, whether it's with a freeway or a nearby development, a school, a Fortune 500 relocation, Fortune 5000 relocation, a billboard, a cell tower, wind energy. Ooh, there's a
wind turbine. Or
yeah,
solar panels. Yeah,
wind turbine or solar panels. So I've had clients that have literally went shopping for land, and they've done a wind test study on it to see what the rates are on it, and then they tie up all the land and go shopping it to wind turbine companies. So lots of cool ideas out there, and sky's the limit. So
well, thanks everyone for
hold it. You forgot the most important part. What are we going to do? An update on Britney Spears?
Oh my gosh, Britney. Yeah. We can give everyone an update on Britney.
That's why everybody was sticking around.
That's the only reason Mark agreed to do this podcast. Okay. He's like, all right, can we give an update on Britney?
Well, it's probably on my mind, and it made me so mad. I got home. I did a webinar last night late, and I walked in the kitchen, started making some food, late dinner. And my wife and daughter-in-law were watching Britney versus Spears, which just came out on Netflix. Literally just came out like in the last week. And of course, I'm a Britney fan. So I was like starting to watch, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got just physically upset. And because it is amazing to see what she went through with her dad and this conservatorship. And there are legislative hearings now and laws being proposed in California to change the conservatorship procedure, because this was just a gross example, an example of the gross misconduct that can occur. Anyway, so and you take Britney out of it, it actually is a pretty phenomenal story. And the same thing happened to the lead singer of the Beach Boys. And there's another movie out on his life story and how he went under conservatorship and how he escaped. So this has been an interesting problem in the state of California, which has some of the strictest conservatorship laws. But in a nutshell, yesterday was the day the judge finally removed the conservatorship. Or was it 2 days ago? Anyway, some of you getting this podcast might be a few days later, but it's just really exciting to see her get her freedom back. She scheduled her wedding. She couldn't get married until this conservatorship was removed. I mean, it is weird. Anyway, so I thought it was kind of
right. Yeah.
You okay with that? Was that a fair update?
That was a great update. And I'm happy for Britney. I wish her the best, hopefully we can, is she now going to start doing Vegas again? She was doing her Vegas shows, and then she was like kind of protesting, I'm not going to perform.
Yeah. And when you watch the
see her in Vegas.
Yeah. And when you watch the Netflix, they go through her career, the last 20 years when all this craziness started and how and why. And it's very revealing.
Wow. 20 years.
It's almost been, well, the saga has been since 2005-ish. I mean, it's pushing, it's been crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's been quite the saga. And her show, All of Me in Vegas, she said, I'm not doing it anymore until my dad is removed as the conservator. And she was being held captive. And she just said that was her only real threat, is I will not perform unless this is gone. And so that was a power move. Anyway, so the show's back on. So we should hold a workshop in Vegas and get everybody's tickets to the show. I'm just going to propose that right now. So
I like it. I like it.
All right.
Well, thanks everyone. For those still listening, I hope you appreciated the Brittany update. Free Brittany. Yeah. But also, maybe learning how to buy land in your IRA too was helpful. Maybe. But please get out, as we said before, share this. Please subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and give us a 5-star review. If you're still listening, I think you actually liked it. You didn't turn it off. I mean, so you're still here. So, and of course, we'll be at the Self-Directed IRA Summit later in October. Go to sdrasummit.com, sdrasummit.com, where you can get your tickets. We'd love to see you there. Full day of training, some networking, charity golf tournament the day before. It's going to be a heck of a good time with yours truly and Mark Jolly Kohler.
Woo! All right. See you there, everybody. And see you next week for another episode, maybe on NFTs. We'll see if Matt approves.
That's a good teaser. I like it.
Right. Okay. See you next week.
Till then.